Hello, I'm Paul Gates. Welcome to this week's episode of The Academics. Joining me today are our regular panelists, Professor Heather Page Preston and Dr. Dave Spiceland. This week we'll be talking about stocks and finances. Why is it important to start saving early? What kind of accounts are offered and what do they really do? So we're going to look at why save, one thing, and what to save, what kind of savings vehicles are available. And I think probably what we're talking about is saving for retirement or saving for some kind of long-term goal. Because the strategies are different depending on what you. Yeah. It's different when you're saving to buy a car than if you're buying a house or getting ready to retire. Yeah. So why save? What's the key?
If you like to live indoors and have food to eat and be able to pay your bills, then saving is good, right? Yeah. You want to have a little fun when you retire? You're going to have some money coming from somewhere. Not going to be a paycheck anymore. So save. Yeah.
I think if you were to talk to any old person, and that's yes. a few of us, they would say, gee, I wished I had started saving years ago. I wished I had been saving more years ago. I wished I had been investing in Walmart, Lowe's Hardware 30 years ago. I would be retired living in Arizona right now. But, it didn't happen.
Yeah, that kind of hindsight is not really, advice that we can give. It's always, hindsight is always 20/20. But, on the back of the envelope, I have calculated that among us, we have 70 years of experience as state employees here now and have probably been saving and investing that long. So we've learned a little about how to do it and what's available. So I think what you look at saving now, whenever you start early, that kind of thing, you're talking about compounding, right? You're talking about interest, yeah. how that works in your favor. And there's a lot of little devices that you can do to kick that off. I mean, you don't have to start with a large amount. And there's an old, it sounds like a trick, but it's not really, that shows how compounding works in your favor. If, let's say you start at 22 when you graduate, and you save we'll just take $10 a week to make it easy.
That's manageable.
And and assume 5% interest, and you save for 10 years, from 22 to 32, and then you stop. And you don't put any money in again. At 62, now you're waiting 30 more years to collect, but at 62 you'll have almost $30,000. If you take the same $10 but you don't start until you're 40, and you invest until you're 62. In other words, 22 years of savings versus the other one, remember, was 10 years of savings, and you're assuming the same interest rate. At 62, you'll only have $21,000. So that's a 41% differential. If you've spent all your money up front, when you're younger, it makes it harder to save down the road. If you've started a little bit early, then you can, not really recommend it, but you can lay back a little bit and do better.
Man,
because you've got the time there.
I am really sad now. I wish I had known that all those years ago. It would have helped quite a bit, because obviously I would not have stopped at 32. I would have put more and more and more in, and that just helps everything, right?
Well, there's always the idea that there's tomorrow. Yeah. I'll do these things tomorrow. And that's, and I can speak personally, there was these bills, and this was due, and that was due, and raising a family, going to school, which in and of itself is an investment, whether it's a bachelor's or, a doctorate work like we've been working on. It's still, I wished I had done that. And then you've got the previous generation of people who didn't trust the banks, yeah. because of during the Roosevelt years and before mm-hmm. that. And a lot of people who put their money, under their mattress or whatever, there's no interest there.
Yeah, like my grandparents in the Depression. And,
yeah, mm-hmm. My grandparents too.
Yeah.
Did that exactly. My grandfather used to save dimes. I don't know why he picked dimes, but he'd save every dime that came through his pocket. Huh. And that would be hidden away under the
Coffee cans
under
of
the-
change
it
for
was-
my
yeah,
grandparents.
it was, you know, it was.
Which actually is an interesting saving technique if you're spending cash, which I know a lot of people don't anymore since it's a plastic world. But you spend a few dollars, don't spend the change, just put it away,
Right.
take it to the bank. It adds up.
It
I've,
does.
I've got this little thing that I put my spare change into, and
Yep.
occasionally I go to the credit union and I pour it in the thing, and $20, $30 or
It adds
whatever.
up. It adds
It
up.
does, and over time, sure.
But that's, that's kind of what I was thinking about when we talked about this topic was you've got college students. So many of them are taking out loans, and they're worried about having to pay those back. Some of them don't understand or aren't counseled well enough to take out just what you need. Don't take out loans and go out to eat on that. Take out loans to pay for your books, your college expenses. Be very careful because you're going to have to pay it all back. And one of the things that you can do to help yourself become financially solvent enough to start to invest when you graduate, as opposed to turning around and paying back all those loans at the full rate, is to, if you have a little extra money now, I mean, it is investing in your education while you're doing it, is throw some at the principal for those loans. You're not obligated to start until after you graduate, but you can start paying some of them off while you're still here. And that makes a big difference in what you'll end up paying at the end because you're reducing the interest. You're reducing the principal that the interest is charged on. And it's amazing how quickly that comes down.
And what you're talking about here, Heather, is that compounding works the other way.
Yeah, it does.
That
Yeah, big time.
It can, right, it can bite you.
Yes, it can.
If you only pay the minimum payment, take too much, more than you can pay back. And we were talking before, and of course, by paying off your balance each month, you're building a credit rating. And so that when you need serious money,
Yes.
you'll be in good shape
Yeah.
if you have a history of having used your credit responsibly.
Yeah, and that's another strategy is, I can speak from personal experience. When I was a freshman, I got a credit card. And the only thing I used it for was my books each term. I paid off the bill when it came because I had that money set aside and from jobs and whatever else I was doing, and paid it off, and my credit was excellent by the time I graduated. I had a great credit history in 4 years and have kept that as pristine as possible. So it's very beneficial to be wise with that plastic. It's so easy if you're not holding cash and watching it go out of your hand to overspend, and you have to be really careful.
Well, and
Dave.
this is beyond the scope of this, how many minutes we have, but there's a lot of things about credit ratings, and I have heard, and I think it's pretty substantial, that if you use a credit card to pay off some sort of a fine, that could work against your credit score, those kind of things. And, don't take it from me, but you really need to get some advice on what do I do to improve my credit score.
Yeah, and the advice thing is excellent because no matter how you're investing, whether it is you're putting money into a savings account, which typically has really low interest, it's still going to add up over time, as you're saying. That's a simple example. You could take some of that money and move it into a money market, which you can move money in and out of it without penalty. You will get better interest on that. You can buy a certificate of deposit, a CD. There are lots of low risk things you can do that will help you get into investing for your future. And one of the things that I find interesting when we're talking about students and what they're willing to do is, you mentioned it before, that a lot of them are averse to risk. They have a very low tolerance for risk when it comes to investing. Maybe not so much for going out, but for investing. And you don't have to play the stock market like a stock shark. There are lots of low risk things you can do that will gradually increase your pot of gold at the end.
I think part of the fear of risk is probably, as much as anything, a result of not really understanding how the systems work. And
You have to educate yourself.
and that's something that's important for young people to do. Just like starting your savings plan, learn what's available, learn how to take advantage of tax-advantaged investments, low-risk things. But as far as risk goes, the younger you are, the more risk you should be able to take, because that'll help you build up what's going to compound over years.
You have time to
but
recover
you have
from a loss.
exactly,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
A college graduate has a working life of 45 years ahead of them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't.
And there's also the issue of when you negotiate for a job, do they have any sort of retirement benefits?
Oh, yes.
Take advantage of it.
Yeah, well, yeah, but I'll tell you a story about somebody, me, who, when he was young, and he looked at his paycheck after he'd been there for about a year, it was a school, and they're taking some money out of my paycheck. So I called them up and I said, what's going on here? Well, this is for your blah, blah, blah retirement account. And I said, I want my money. I want to be able to use, well, this is for the future, because we put, see, that's the matching funds thing I didn't realize. I put in 6%, they put in 6%.
That's a good match.
It's
Yes,
not
that's
bad
an
at all.
excellent match.
Almost like it is, here at Appalachian State. But what happened was, when I left that school, they said, well, you can get your retirement money back. And like an idiot, I said, okay, not realizing the government was zapping me with taxes, because a lot of that when you're 59 and a half, which of course to young people is a lifetime away. It's never gonna, and that's another issue. But looking back, I took some of my retirement money through the years, and what I should have done was to roll it over.
Right.
So when you negotiate for a job, ask what kind of things that they have. Maybe something that they'll put money into, some kind of a matching account.
And the rollover provisions are particularly important for young people and the job market and the kind of companies that are starting today.
Yeah, you're not going to be at the same
You're not
place
going to be at
for
the
40
same place
years.
a long
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Right. You're going to have several jobs, before you're 40, and maybe some after that. But yeah, so being aware of how to keep your money invested rather than take it out and buy a car.
And pay a tax penalty on it.
And pay a tax penalty if you're younger than 59 and a half,
Yeah.
as Dave says. Yes,
Yeah.
that's right.
Yeah.
Well, what kind of, when you're doing this and you're getting your employer to say to do the match and you're doing the max to your 401k, or what's the 401k? Let's go over that. Let's talk about how that works, what they invest in.
Well, it's a private fund, and the nice thing about it is, like with my TIAA CREF, I can set up what I will invest in. So there are, and I'm not sure about 401ks. Mine isn't really a 401k,
Yeah.
Well, for
but find out.
education, it's, yeah.
But you're investing in, if it's a credit union or a bank or whatever, there's something to where you're giving them money so that they could use it, for some purpose. So you're helping the economy technically.
Yeah, what you do with what we have, you use a money management team. They diversify for you. They're the experts. They move things around in your portfolio as you direct them, and it spreads your risk out. It is mutual funds or index funds is what they're called, and these people advise you on the best investments. You should review it at least once a year with them so that you're getting the best return on your investment. But you can have a combination of high risk, low risk, medium risk, any combination you want. And it's actually a really good strategy to have, particularly if you have some things that are near and dear to your heart but don't necessarily give you the best return for your investment. It allows you to still contribute to that, help them out, and you get some return, but you're still making money on some other ones.
One thing I think it's important, you always hear talk about fees. And when you're talking about active management, that's going to be higher fee activities.
Yeah.
When you mentioned index funds, Heather, that's just is an investment that represents the broad market.
Yeah.
And of course there's many indexes. There's the S&P 500 is a well-known one, the Russell 1000, the Wilshire 2000, Wilshire 5000.
Yep.
And the total markets, managed by very often insurance companies or money management firms like Fidelity or Vanguard, the big ones, the behemoths. And you don't even have to go as risky as index funds if you really are, because the new product now, and this should be appealing and I think comforting perhaps to new investors, are target date funds, which for instance, a target date fund, it's called a 2060 fund, for instance.
Okay.
That's aimed at people who will be retiring on or about 2060. And so they will pick a mix of investments appropriate for that age group.
Right.
Now we're back to the higher risk, Dave, which
Yeah.
you should be willing to take at that young age. And then as you mature and as you know, they change the mix, and so that when you get ready to collect in 2060, you're more into fixed income investments and bonds and things like that,
Yeah.
rather than volatile equities. Maybe a more conservative portfolio of bonds and so forth.
Well, and there's lots of different strategies, and if you talk to 5 people, you get 6 different opinions. So you have to make your own decisions about it. But like as we are recording the show, the stock market dipped about, and I say the stock market, Dow Jones, dipped about, which by the way is not the best market to look at, but it was about 300 and some points today. And you look at that, and if you're the kind of investor to where, well, I need to move or I need to sell or whatever, my thinking has been through the years is hold tight.
That's right.
That's
Because if it's doing this, it's going to be doing this kind of business. And if you're sitting there thinking about, well, what am I going to use my money for if I take it out or whatever, you're looking at it the wrong way.
They
Yeah.
always say, don't try to time the market.
Yeah,
No.
yeah.
That's
You will get
a
burned.
loser's game.
Yes.
You can't call every turn up or down.
Yeah.
And the best thing is to be in. Don't try to get in and out at
Yeah.
the opportune
Look-
times. That's exactly.
Yes. Yeah.
And
especially
hold,
the
hold-
fees.
Hold the course.
Hold the
stay
course.
the
Mhm.
course.
Yep.
Yeah, and don't panic. And that's always been my view, because it's always going to go up. It's always going to go down.
Sure.
And you will make money if you stay.
Right. Over time,
Yep.
the trend is up.
Yeah.
One of my favorite McCartney albums is Tug of War. It's yin yang, that kind of thing. And there's a song, "The Pound is Sinking" and whatever. And he in that song, I think very adequately talks about the markets and how volatile they are and whatever. And the philosophy is, you just kind of go for it, I think.
A couple other things we ought to mention maybe is different kinds of savings vehicles. IRAs, for instance. The traditional IRA, you pay the tax when it's earned, and then you invest, and you only pay at retirement. They're pre-tax investments. The traditional IRA, you get the deduction up front. I'm sorry, I got that backwards. You get the deduction up front, and you only pay then when you
Take the money
take the
out.
money out at
Okay.
retirement. And theoretically, at that point, you're in a lower tax bracket
Yeah.
and pay less.
Yeah.
The opposite of that is a Roth IRA, where you pay the tax now, invest, and then forevermore, you don't pay any tax on that money. So you don't pay anything on the earnings between now and when you withdraw. Of course, you have to withdraw at some point. At age 70, the year you turn 70 and a half is when you have to start drawing from
Well,
from
Social
IRAs.
Security is the same.
Right,
70.
that's right.
Yeah.
70 is the max you can
Yeah.
go. That's right. And of course, IRAs are limited as to how much you can put into it. $5,500 is the limit, whereas in 401ks, the other kinds of mutual funds, retirement funds, matching funds that we were talking about before, the limit's $18,500. If you're older, you get what they call a catch-up provision, kicks in at 50, where you can save an extra $6,000 to kind of help you juice up your account a little bit more.
Yeah.
Well, here's the elephant in the room. We haven't talked about Social Security. Should students, 20, 22 years old, who are watching, should they count on Social Security?
Not entirely.
No.
It was never designed to be your only.
If you look at it, it's supplemental income. It was never meant to be my whole ball of
That's
wax.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But is it going to be broke by the time 30, 40, 50 years down the road?
They were saying that when I got out of college.
True.
And the truth is that the Social Security Trust Fund changes all the time, depending on employment rates, depending on wages, and they always say, what's the current number? That's going to be broke by 2039 or something. I mean, come on. By the time they were saying in 1975, when I got out of college, they were saying it was going to be broke by 1995.
And
Well,
why is it called the third rail for Congress folks?
well, because that people think they're going to depend on it so much, and that Congress doesn't want to
They don't want to touch it.
touch it because at the risk of their being turned out of office.
Especially if they're in places with a large number of older people, Florida, places like that.
Retirement places.
Yeah,
yeah.
because otherwise it's do we raise, do we decrease benefits, which older people like me, I'm getting Social Security now, do we kind of go, well, no, not really, or do we increase the amount of money that is taken out of a person's paycheck, which especially younger people are not going to be wild about that. So what do you do? And we'd leave it at that, right?
Not having the crystal ball, I think we might have to.
Oh yeah.
That would be, the idea though is to, don't worry about it. Look at your overall picture. By the time you should be thinking about, Social Security is kind of automatic. I mean, I think that's why advice would be don't think about it now, because it's going to happen, but just do what you can for yourself with other savings vehicles.
Yeah.
And trust that the trust fund will remain solvent, and that they'll be able to
Cross
meet
my
their
fingers here,
their
so.
obligations.
You,
Well,
how about me?
yeah,
But anyway,
sure.
yeah, we're probably getting kind of close to the end. I feel
little bit.
I'm getting those vibes. So one of the things that I want to mention are there are a number of apps out there to help students. Well, they're actually helping me too. Budgeting apps for your phone, tablet, that will help you. Just make sure it's one that's reputable, very secure. It will also, there are apps that will help you invest, and some of them actually give you a little cash to start with if you sign on with them. The key is make sure you learn about this stuff. Use your education. Make sure that you research it. Make sure that you talk to people who don't really have anything to sell you, but will counsel you. You will have to pay for their knowledge at some point, but there are a lot of brokers who will take on student clients for minimal fees and minimal investment amounts. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Or
it can
first
be
time
done.
free.
Yeah.
Sometimes they'll
Yeah.
have it.
That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah, it's something that well, you mentioned apps and so forth. I mean, I think younger people who are just getting started should really take advantage of that and
Absolutely.
take some comfort in it
just,
too.
Just be real careful that the ways in which you get money these days are a lot of times giving away your private information.
Right.
Just be very careful about that, because the return on that investment's not very good. You get a 10% off coupon, but they get so much more in that relationship.
We have to wrap this
Oh
up
no!
to close the show, but you're going to get your couple of minutes here, Dave. To close the show this week, Dr. David Spiceland will give us some information about saving resources.
Well, the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission has a book in a PDF form online that's specifically for saving and investing for students. Along with that, professors, such as us, can also help with questions that students might have.
That's our time for today. I'm Paul Gates. We hope you'll join us next time on The Academics.